Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Daily Word. It is Wednesday. Well, maybe we're starting over. Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday. I'm not sure this is working. If you could let me know that you'll be able to see this, that would be great. Welcome to our Daily Word. It's Wednesday. That you could join me for our time together as we continue our conversation through our daily word and how it works for us in our daily lives and how it affects us. So it's a beautiful morning this morning, but apparently it's going to be hot. So be careful if you're going anywhere today. Just a reminder that Sunday morning we'll gather for worship. If you are watching via Facebook Live on Sunday morning, be sure to have your communion elements ready because we're going to share in the sacrament of communion. So for this morning, I've chosen for our text from the book of Hosea, chapter 14, just this one verse, verse 5. And we hear these words: I will be like dew to Israel. He shall blossom like the lily. He shall strike root like the forest of Lebanon. Now, we in our lives, I think, and maybe it's just me, maybe none of you all are like this, but in my life, I like the big reminders about God in my life. I like those, I like those miracle moments. I like the big, powerful God moments, where you can see drastic change. When it rains, I'd like it to rain enough to make the grass green, not just this little drizzle that might happen. I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person who likes the big things to happen. And I suppose that's not always the best way to look at it, but for us, usually, it's those big moments, that remind us of who God is. And we live our lives kind of in that kind of way. But Hosea, in this text, reminds us that God will be like dew to Israel. Now, for us, dew can be a pain. When I was camping at the lake the last couple of weeks, even though it didn't rain, I would go outside early in the morning and my chairs would be covered in dew. And that drove me crazy. And so I had to put them away at night so I could have something to sit on first thing in the morning. We walk in the grass, we get our shoes wet because of dew, and often we find that a frustrating kind of thing. But Hosea reminds us that God is going to come to the people of Israel like dew. And Hosea reminds us that there are people in the world who live lives that are so perilous that dew can be the difference between life and death. A layer of it allows plants to grow without having sucked out of them by murderously dry air. When plants absorb the dew, it waters them with nothing the roots can do. And Hosea reminds us, and I think it's a good reminder for us, that God most always shows up is in the small ways. The way that God almost always shows up is in the small ways of life. It's in that moment, those small moments where God just shows up and we go, oh, we may not recognize it in the moment, but God shows up in those very distinct, small ways. We don't need God to show up for us in geysers and floods and waterfalls. We don't need to be fully hydrated to know of God's presence in our lives. It's when we, I think, are most thirsty, the most needing of God's presence, it's then that we allow ourselves to be saved by it, to be moved by it, to be fed by the dew. Hear what Hosea says. I will be like dew to Israel, God says. He shall blossom like the lily. He shall strike root like the forest of Lebanon. This reminder that God is present with us in the smallest of ways in our lives. And I think for us, we need that. We need that reminder for us. For me, it's often that I look out my window, down to the front of the church on Ohio Avenue, and I see the grass and the trees, and I see the tree that was planted in memory of my dad, and it's really growing. It's grown a lot this summer. And I'm reminded that it's that small thing of God that moves in us, that shapes us, that helps us to be fully connected to God. And I want that for us, to find God in the small ways. We don't have to go spend money at the store to see God. We don't have to have our pockets lined with all kinds of stuff to find God. We don't have to be, any of those things. We simply have to know that God comes to us like the dew to Israel and then shapes our lives. And I think that's such a powerful thing for us to remember. Yeah, I like the big, bold things in life. I like the star-banging kind of things. But then I'm reminded that those things come rarely. They're a rare gift. What's always a gift is the daily ways that God moves in our lives, like dew to Israel. And that we just need, I think, to be more aware of how God moves in those kinds of ways. And so that the scripture struck me this morning when I read it, to think about that God just moves in us in the small, subtle ways. Maybe we're not aware, or maybe, like me, we need to become more aware. And I hope that word would sustain us today as we live our lives, as we avoid the heat of the day, as we go through what seems like mundane things in life, that we would just allow God to move in us in the small ways. And I want that for me, and I want that for you as we live our lives. So, I will be like dew to Israel. He shall blossom like the lily. He shall strike root like the forest of Lebanon. That's who God is. That's who God was to the people of Israel. And that's who God is to us. So, may you know of that God today. The God that's like the dew to Israel. And may you know God's love and grace and mercy in your life. And may you know of my love for all of you. And I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Have a great day.